This episode of Brains on Games is about a trick-taking game where 7 is the magic number. Welcome to Brains on Games. I'm Dr. Brian McDonald, and this episode we're going to talk about a trick-taking game where it's all about the sevens. It's a game that was sent to me not too long ago by the folks over at Ninja Star Games, and it is a game called Yokai Septet. Now, this is a game that can be played by kids aged 10 and up. You can play a 3-player game or a 4-player game where you're playing in teams of 2, and a game takes about half an hour. Let's take a deeper look at Yokai Septet. Yokai Septet is a light game in terms of its complexity, and it's a trick-taking game where, like I said, 7 is the magic number. You're going to hear lots of 7s as I talk about this game. What you're trying to do in this game to win those points is capture the 7 cards. Those are your yokai bosses that you're trying to win in each hand of this game. Now, they all have the number 7 on them, but these stars are the points that you're going to earn by capturing them, and you'll get these tokens at the end of the round of play. There are 7 suits of cards in Yokai Septet, and each one has different numbers. So with the green cards, you're going from 1 to 7, and then the next suit has from 2 to 8 and 3 to 9. So it continues like that. So depending on what color you're trying to earn, it's going to be maybe easier to win the green boss because that's the highest card. It's going to be much harder to earn, say, a red boss where the card numbers go from 6 to 12. So in each corner of the card, you'll have the number. That's the value of the card that you're trying to earn. It's going to indicate within the suit what numbers you're going to see. So for the purple, it goes from 2 to 8. And there are also cheat sheet cards in the box for each of the players, just to remind you of what numbers are in each suit, but they are marked on each card. And you're going to be playing these rounds of trick-taking. Now, you might be familiar with trick-taking games. Hearts is probably the classic trick-taking game, and I taught my son and his friends how to play Hearts when we were on a university tour, and he tells me that's the go-to game now that they play when a bunch of people are just hanging around. They'll pull out a deck of cards and play Hearts. So he already likes trick, and of course I like trick-taking games too. But these games are all about one player. The first player is going to play a card. Everyone else has to play a card of that suit if they have one of those cards. If they don't, they can play any card they want. The high card in the lead suit will win that hand, but there's always a trump suit, which is the highest trump card is going to win the hand, of course. And in Yokai Septet, there's also an ace, which is considered to be the highest card. That's the low number 1 for the green suit in Yokai Septet. You've got this deck of 49 cards, and in a 4-player game, you're playing in teams of 2, so your teammate is going to be across from you at the table. 4-player game, each player is going to have 12 cards in their hand, and there's 1 card that's left over. In a 3-player game, you're dealing out 16 cards, and there's 1 that's left over. Now, we played this game at a 3-player count. Both of my boys came over and I played it with them. And so we didn't get to experience the team play, but I think that would be, I love team card games, and I think that would be a much more fun and strategic way to play. Don't get me wrong, we had fun playing the 3-player game because we do like trick-taking, but having a teammate on the other side of the table would make it easier to be a bit more strategic in your card plays. As you play through the game, you're trying to win these 7 cards. You're trying to win the yokai bosses, and the round is going to end if players run out of cards. That didn't happen very often. If one player wins a certain number of tricks without these bosses, that player is going to lose, and other players are going to get points. And in a team game, if you win 4 of these bosses, that's going to end the round and you're going to earn points for the bosses. It's one thing that's neat about it is that whatever the trump suit is, you're not going to earn any points for that particular boss. So it's a useful card for winning hands, but even though it's very powerful, it doesn't earn you any points if you're scoring. So you might be trying to force other players to win hands that don't have any of these sevens in them, and you're trying to be the one who's the first to get to 4 or 3 in a 3-player game. And trick-taking games where you're purposely trying to lose hands, that's another thing that I do enjoy. You don't want to win every single hand in this game, because if you win too many without bosses in them, you are going to be the loser and all the other players are going to get points instead. So you might be tempted, you want to play those high cards, but you want to hang on to the high cards so that you're winning the sevens. It does make it more strategic. You have to think about those card plays. And that does bring me up to the question this episode. Like I said earlier, I love card games. Well, any board game really where you're playing as teams. I really like to team up with one of my kids or one of my friends, and you can have a competition with 2-player teams or 3-player teams. That's something that I really enjoy. We love playing Land versus Sea that way. And here's my question this episode: do you prefer games where you're playing as an individual, or would you rather be part of a team? You can leave your answer to that question in the comment section below the video. But let's talk about the skills that you're practicing when you're playing a game like Yokai Septet. One thing that jumps out right away as we were playing through this game is that it is really helpful if you can remember the cards that have been played. You can be much more strategic in your decisions about what card you're going to play if you know that the higher cards have already been out on the table. But when you win one of these tricks, the only card that remains face up is the boss, because the boss cards are the ones that are going to determine when the round ends. All those other cards that aren't bosses wind up being face down, and you're just counting up the piles to make sure somebody doesn't get to 7 tricks without enough bosses. You definitely want to remember those cards that have been played previously, but you're also being judicious in which hands you want to win. So this is an important developmental skill, because kids love, number one, kids love playing those high cards and winning hands of cards. But if you win too many without the right cards, you're going to wind up losing the game. So you're purposely trying to lose. So there's a little bit of behavioral inhibition, you might want to call it, that's involved when you're playing these games where you're only supposed to win a certain number of hands. And if we're talking about behavioral inhibition, that is an example of one of the executive functioning skills, that important set of skills that's involved in all of these strategy games, that important set of skills and behaviors that are all about working towards a goal. So you're trying to resist playing those high cards and win the wrong hands. You're trying to hang on to those and make sure that you lose some, so that you might be forcing other players to win hands that they don't want, so that you don't wind up ending the round with the wrong number of bosses sitting out face up in front of you. Final thoughts about Yokai Septet. Well, this is a trick-taking card game, and right away, that's something that's up my alley. I do like these kinds of games, and playing on teams is something else that's really appealing. As far as I'm concerned, I love teaming up with one of my kids, like I said. It's got this Japanese-style art, so if you're into that style, and you might even recognize some of the characters on the cards, it sort of looks like Beast from Beauty and the Beast, if you're looking at that purple card over there. So you've got an art style that's pretty unique. I really like the unique suits. The fact that each suit has different numbers, different high cards, that really does add an extra wrinkle to it. You do have to think about what cards you're going to play and remember where your card numbers fit within the highest and lowest rank of that particular suit. So it really does add an interesting wrinkle. We only played it at 3 players. Unfortunately, I do think that the team play would be more strategic, and that would be the best way to go. And if there are some downsides to Yokai Septet, I would say that's one of them. It's pretty inflexible in terms of the number of players. You're either playing with 3 or you're playing with 4 players in 2 teams of 2. I think the 4-player count is the best way to go. Like I said, we had fun playing with 3, but you are kind of limited in the number of players you can have playing this game. The other thing about it is that there's 7 suits. 7 is the magic number. 7 suits. You want to win the 7 cards. It's called Septet for a reason. But with 7 suits, I don't know how you play those trick takers, but when we get those big hands of cards, the first thing that we're doing at the beginning of the game is sorting them all out in order and making sure we've got all of our suits grouped together so that we know which cards to play. If you're playing with just a big jumble of cards, it's very difficult to make any kind of strategic choice or to even realize if you've got a trump card that you can play because you don't have another card of that same suit. With 7 different suits, that took a minute. So before anyone could play any of the cards, everybody's kind of sorting through their hand and making sure that it's all organized. And when you've got 7 different suits to play, it does become a bit challenging to decide how you're going to manage that. I will say, though, despite those two little hiccups, if you want to call them that, those minor downsides, honestly, this is a game that right away we finished and both of the kids said, let's play that again. So if that's an indicator of whether a game is a fun game to play, both of my boys now, they are 21 and 19, both of them said, let's do this again, which is fantastic because that's what I want to do is play games with my kids. And that, in a nutshell, is Yokai Septet. Thanks so much to Ninja Star Games for sending this game my way. If you have any questions or suggestions, or if you want to answer my question, you can leave a comment in the comment section below the video, or you can email me at brian@brainsongames.ca. Brainsongames.ca is the website. That's where future episodes will go. The previous ones are up there already. Brains on Games is the Twitter handle and the Facebook page and the Instagram feed, so we're all over the place. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to be notified of future ones, you can head on over to YouTube and click that subscribe button. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you next time.